3 days after my mother's funeral, I became one of the richest men in California. I didn't know it yet. Not when I woke up that morning in the house where I'd grown up, surrounded by boxes of her belongings. Not when I drove to the lawyer's office, expecting to sign paperwork for a modest estate. Maybe the house, her old car, whatever savings she'd managed to accumulate on a teacher's pension. I walked into Adelaide Ashworth's office, expecting to inherit memories. I walked out with $48 million, 3 luxury villas, and a wine empire that generated $25 million a year. And I couldn't wait to tell my wife. I drove home faster than I should have, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, my mind racing with possibilities. We could pay off the mortgage, send the kids to any school they wanted, travel, retire early, do all the things we'd talked about but never thought we'd afford. Sloan would be thrilled. After 14 years of marriage, of budgeting and sacrificing and putting dreams on hold, we had finally hit the jackpot. My mother, the quiet, modest woman who clipped coupons and drove a 15-year-old Honda, had secretly been building an empire. And now that empire was ours. I pulled into the driveway at 4:47 p.m. The house looked the same as it always did. Beige siding, manicured lawn, the rose bushes Sloan had planted 3 summers ago. Normal, ordinary, the life we'd built together over 14 years. I practically ran to the front door, the documents from Adelaide's office clutched in my hand. I opened the door, and I heard my wife's voice floating from the kitchen. Finally, that woman is gone. I froze in the doorway, my hand still on the knob. She laughed. A sound I knew well, but different somehow. Colder, crueler. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this. My blood turned to ice. I should have announced myself. Should have called out, let her know I was home. That's what a normal husband would do. But something stopped me. Some instinct, honed by 44 years of reading people, told me to stay silent, to listen. So I did. And what I heard next destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. I stood in the hallway, barely breathing, as my wife's voice carried from the kitchen. No, I couldn't say anything before. She was speaking into her phone, her back to me, completely unaware that I was 10 feet away. I had to play the dutiful daughter-in-law, holding her hand at the hospital, pretending to cry at the funeral. God, it was exhausting. A pause. Someone responding on the other end. A man's voice, too faint to make out. Exactly. Sloan laughed again, and the sound made my stomach turn. And the best part? There's nothing to inherit. His mother lived in that little house, drove that old car, she was barely getting by. Merritt's been sending her money for years. The whole family legacy thing was a joke. Another pause. 2 weeks, that's all I need. I'll file for divorce, claim emotional distress, say he became cold and distant after his mother died. Classic sympathetic wife routine. I'll get the house, his retirement fund, half of everything. And then, she giggled. My wife of 14 years, the mother of my children, giggled like a schoolgirl planning a prank. And then we disappear, just you and me, far away from this boring life. The man's voice again. I strained to hear but couldn't make out the words. I love you too. Her voice dropped to something intimate, something I hadn't heard directed at me in years. More than he ever knew. A pause. Oh shit, I think I hear his car. I have to go. Call me tonight when he's asleep. She ended the call, and then she turned around. Our eyes met across the kitchen. For exactly 3 seconds, neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The documents in my hand, the proof of $48 million, of villas and vineyards and a future I had been so excited to share with her, hung at my side like a death sentence. Her face went white. Merritt. Her voice cracked. How long have you been standing there? I didn't answer. I looked at her, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time in years. The woman I had loved since I was 29 years old. The woman I had built a life with, had children with, had trusted with everything I had. The woman who had just celebrated my mother's death and plotted to steal everything I owned. Merritt, wait, it's not what you think. I turned and walked out the door. I drove without thinking about where I was going. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. The documents from Adelaide's office sat on the passenger seat, the papers that represented everything I had just gained, and everything I had just lost. $48 million, 3 luxury villas, a wine empire, and a wife who had been counting down the days until my mother died so she could leave me. I ended up at my brother's house. Kiernan lived across town, in a modest split level he'd bought after his divorce 3 years ago. He opened the door before I even knocked. He must have seen me pull up, must have seen something in the way I walked that told him something was terribly wrong. Merritt, what happened? I couldn't speak. I just handed him the documents from Adelaide's office and walked past him into the living room, collapsing onto his couch like a man who had just run a marathon. Kiernan read through the papers in silence. I watched his expression change, confusion to shock to disbelief to something approaching wonder. "This is real?" he finally asked. "Mom was worth $48 million? That's what Adelaide said. She showed me the account statements, the property deeds, everything. And the wine business? Callaway Vineyards. She started it 44 years ago, apparently. Built it up slowly, kept it completely separate from her regular life. Nobody knew, not even Dad, before he died." Kiernan sat down heavily in the chair across from me. Why would she hide this? Why would she live like... He gestured vaguely, unable to find the words. "To test us." That's what her letter said. I pulled out the sealed envelope Adelaide had given me, the one my mother had written before she died. She wanted to see who we really were, who the people around us really were. The people around us? I told him about Sloan, about the phone call, about everything I had heard. When I finished, Kiernan was silent for a long moment. She didn't know about the inheritance. No, she thought there was nothing. She was planning to divorce me and take half of what little she thought I had. Now she's about to find out that she just threw away access to $48 million. Yeah. We sat in silence, the weight of it settling over us, like a shroud. "What are you going to do?" Kiernan asked finally. I looked down at my mother's letter, still unopened in my hands. First, I'm going to read what Mom had to say. Then, I'm going to call Adelaide and figure out how to protect everything. And then, I thought about Sloane's voice, the way she had laughed, the coldness in her tone when she talked about my mother, the woman who had loved her, welcomed her into our family, treated her like a daughter. Then, I'm going to make sure she doesn't get a single penny. I opened my mother's letter that night. Kiernan had given me the guest room, insisted I stay as long as I needed. The house was quiet, the neighborhood silent outside the window, as I sat on the bed and carefully unsealed the envelope my mother had left for me. Her handwriting was the same as always, neat, precise, the penmanship of a woman who had spent 40 years as a teacher. But the words she had written were unlike anything I had expected. "My dearest Merritt, if you're reading this letter, then I am gone, and Adelaide has told you the truth about our family's wealth. I imagine you have many questions. I hope this letter answers at least some of them. I started Callaway Vineyards in 1980, the year you were born. Your father knew about it. He helped me secure the initial loan, helped me plant the first vines. But we agreed early on that we would keep the business separate from our regular lives. We didn't want money to change who we were, or who our children would become. When your father died, I considered telling you and Kiernan the truth. But I had already seen how wealth changes people, how it attracts the wrong kind of attention, and I wanted to know, needed to know, that the people in your lives loved you for who you are, not for what you might one day inherit. So I watched, and I waited, and I paid attention. Kiernan's wife left him 3 years ago. She said it was because they had grown apart, but I had her investigated, Merritt. I'm sorry if that sounds paranoid, but a mother protects her children. She was having an affair with her personal trainer. She thought Kiernan was ordinary, that he would never amount to anything special. She was wrong. But she revealed her true character, and that was valuable information. Your wife, Sloane, is different. She has been more careful. But I have seen things over the years that worried me. The way she rolled her eyes when she thought no one was watching, whenever I called or visited. The excuses she made to avoid family gatherings. The complaints she made to you about helping with my medical appointments, about wasting time on visits. I heard her once, 2 years ago, on a phone call. She didn't know I was in the house. She called me the old woman and said she couldn't wait for me to finally let go. I hired an investigator last year. I'm sorry, Merritt. I know this seems like a betrayal of your trust, but I needed to protect you the way I always have. The investigator found evidence of an affair, a man named Stellan Kavanaugh. The relationship has been going on for at least 18 months. Adelaide has all the documentation, photographs, messages, financial records. I don't know what you will do with this information. That is your decision, not mine. But I want you to know that I have structured your inheritance to protect you. The entire estate is held in an irrevocable trust. No matter what happens, divorce, lawsuits, anything, the money, the properties, the business, all of it belongs to you and Kiernan alone. No spouse can touch it. You are a good man, Merritt. You have always been a good man. Kind, patient, devoted to your family. You didn't get that from wealth. You got it from love. I am so proud of the person you have become, and I am so sorry that I won't be there to see what you do next. Live well, my son. Love deeply. Choose people who deserve you. And never let anyone make you feel small for having a big heart. All my love, forever, Mom. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put my head in my hands and cried. For my mother, for my marriage, for the life I thought I had that was crumbling around me. And when the tears finally stopped, I knew exactly what I had to do. Let me tell you about my mother. Vivienne Calloway was born in 1950, in a small town in the Central Valley of California. Her parents were farm workers, migrants who followed the harvests, picking grapes and oranges and whatever else the season demanded. They had nothing, gave everything, and raised a daughter who learned early that the world doesn't hand you anything for free. She put herself through college, working nights at a diner and weekends at a laundromat. She became a teacher because she wanted to give other kids the chance she'd had to fight for herself. She married my father, a vineyard manager, in 1978. They bought a small piece of land with every penny they had saved. And in 1980, the year I was born, she started Calloway Vineyards. The first years were hard. They made barely enough wine to sell at local farmers markets. My father worked his regular job during the day and helped with the vines at night. My mother graded papers at the kitchen table while fermenting tanks bubbled in the garage. But the wine was good. Really good. Word spread. Orders came in. By the time I was 10, Calloway Vineyards had a distribution deal with 3 restaurants in San Francisco. By the time I was 20, they were selling to hotels and resorts up and down the coast. My father died when I was 26. Heart attack, sudden and devastating. I thought it would destroy the business, but my mother kept going. She hired managers, expanded production, bought more land. She did it all quietly, modestly, never changing her lifestyle or her values. She kept living in the same house, kept driving the same car, kept teaching until she retired because she loved it, not because she needed the money. And she never told me any of this. I thought I was supporting her, sending money every month to help with her bills, her medical expenses, her modest retirement. She never refused the help, but she also never spent it. According to Adelaide, she put every dollar I sent into a separate account. It was all there, waiting for me. Over 15 years of support plus interest. My mother had been worth tens of millions of dollars, and she had let me believe I was keeping her afloat. Because she wanted to see who I really was. Because she wanted to see who the people around me really were. And now, finally, I understood why. Let me tell you about my marriage. I met Sloane in 2009 at a friend's wedding. She was 24, beautiful, charming, the kind of woman who made everyone in the room feel like they were the only person who mattered. I was 29, fresh out of a long-term relationship, convinced I would never find anyone. She found me. We dated for a year, got engaged, got married in 2010 in a small ceremony at a vineyard. Not my mother's vineyard because I didn't know it existed. Sloane wanted something elegant but affordable. She said she didn't need anything fancy. Looking back, I wonder if that was the first sign. The careful calculation of someone who was already planning for the future, already measuring what she could get. But I was in love. I didn't see what was right in front of me. Ren was born in 2012. Sailor in 2015. We bought a house in the suburbs, settled into the rhythm of family life. I worked as an engineer at a tech company. Sloane worked part-time at an interior design firm. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. At least, I thought we were comfortable. The signs were there, if I had been paying attention. The way Sloane's interest faded whenever we visited my mother. The excuses she made to leave early, to skip holidays to avoid any obligation that didn't directly benefit her. The small comments, "Your mother's house is so depressing," or "I don't know why we have to spend every Christmas with your family." I made excuses, told myself she was stressed, tired, busy with the kids. Told myself every marriage had rough patches, that we would get through it together. But we weren't going through it together. She was going through it with someone else. Stellan Kavanaugh, real estate developer. Married, with 2 children of his own. They had met at some networking event 18 months ago, and they had been conducting an affair ever since. My mother knew. She had documented everything. And now Adelaide had a file full of evidence, photographs, text messages, hotel receipts, that painted a picture of a woman who had never loved me at all. I had been a placeholder, a stepping stone, someone to provide stability while she looked for something better. And when my mother died, she thought she had finally found her exit. She just didn't know that my mother had left me a fortune. I stayed at Kiernan's house for 3 days. Sloane called constantly, at first confused, then worried, then angry. I didn't answer. I let her texts pile up unanswered, her voicemails fill my inbox without being heard. "Where are you? We need to talk." "This is ridiculous, Merritt. You're acting like a child. I don't know what you think you heard, but you're wrong. Answer your phone, now." I showed the messages to Adelaide during our second meeting. She read them with the professional detachment of someone who had seen this kind of thing many times before. "Classic damage control," she said. "She's trying to figure out how much you know, how much danger she's in. Once she realizes you're not coming back, she'll shift tactics." "What kind of tactics?" "She'll either try to reconcile, tears, apologies, promises to change, or she'll go on the offensive. Claim you abandoned her. Try to establish a narrative where she's the victim. She doesn't know about the inheritance yet." "No, and that's our advantage." Adelaide pulled out a file, the same file my mother had compiled over the past year. "Your mother was thorough. We have evidence of the affair, financial records showing gifts Stellan gave her, testimony from Stellan's wife Marguerite, who is also filing for divorce." "Marguerite knows?" "She figured it out about a month ago. Your mother's investigator wasn't the only one watching Stellan Kavanaugh." Adelaide smiled grimly. "Marguerite is willing to testify if it comes to that. She wants to make sure both Stellan and Sloane face consequences." "So, what's our strategy?" "We file first. Divorce papers, custody petition, the works. We include the evidence of infidelity, which in this state can affect the division of assets. We demonstrate that the inheritance is held in an irrevocable trust and therefore not subject to marital property division. And we request primary custody of the children based on Sloane's conduct. Will that work?" "Your mother made sure it would work. That's why she set up the trust the way she did. That's why she documented everything. She was protecting you, Merritt, even after she was gone." I looked down at the file in my hands. The photographs of my wife with another man. The text messages where she complained about me, mocked me, called me boring and predictable. "When do we serve her?" "Whenever you're ready. I'd recommend doing it soon before she has time to formulate her own strategy. Catch her off guard." I thought about Sloane's face when she turned around and saw me in the kitchen doorway. The flash of fear, the immediate calculation behind her eyes. "Tomorrow," I said. "Serve her tomorrow." Sloane was served at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't there to see it. Adelaide advised me to stay away, to let the process server handle everything professionally. But I imagined the scene many times. The knock on the door. The confused look on Sloane's face. The moment she realized what the envelope contained, she called me 17 times in the hour after she was served. I answered on the 18th call. Merritt. Her voice was different now, no longer angry, but desperate, pleading. "We need to talk, please. This is all a terrible misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Sloane. I know you think you heard something, but you're wrong. I wasn't talking to anyone important. It was just, Stellan Kavanaugh. You've been sleeping with him for 18 months. You met at a networking event. You go to the Hilton on Tuesdays when I think you're at book club. You told him you love him. You told him you were planning to divorce me as soon as my mother died." Silence on the other end. "How do you know about—" She stopped, recalculated. "Someone's been spying on me? That's illegal, Merritt? That's—" My mother hired an investigator. She knew about everything, and she documented everything. "Your mother?" Sloane's voice went shrill. "That woman was—" "Careful." My voice was ice. "Be very careful what you say about my mother." Another silence. "Merritt, please. Whatever she told you, she was wrong. She never liked me, you know that. She was always trying to turn you against me. She didn't tell me anything. She died before she could, but she left evidence. Photographs, messages, financial records. Everything a divorce court will need to see exactly who you are." "Divorce court?" Sloane laughed, a high, nervous sound. "You're going to divorce me? Over what? Some misunderstanding? Some paranoid fantasy your dying mother came up with? Over an 18-month affair? Over the fact that you were celebrating her death and planning to leave me? Over the phone call where you said you couldn't wait for her to finally let go? I didn't mean— You said there was nothing to inherit. You said she was barely getting by. You laughed about it. Because it's true, your mother had nothing, Merritt. She lived in that tiny house, drove that ancient car. Whatever she told you about some fortune is a lie, a fantasy she made up because she knew she was dying and wanted to cause trouble." I smiled. I couldn't help it. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" "Why don't you read the divorce papers, Sloane? Really read them. Page 3 should be particularly interesting." I hung up. Adelaide told me later what happened next. Sloane had thrown the divorce papers aside after the process server left, too upset to read them properly. But after our phone call, she went back. She found page 3, the page that listed the assets of the Vivian Calloway Family Trust. $48 million in liquid assets. 3 luxury villas in California, Napa Valley, Sonoma County, and Malibu. Callaway Vineyards, a wine business generating $25 million in annual revenue. All held in an irrevocable trust. All belonging solely to me and my brother. All completely protected from divorce proceedings. Sloane called Stellan first, then her lawyer. Then several other lawyers who all told her the same thing. There was nothing she could do. The trust was ironclad. The evidence of her affair was damning. She had no claim to anything. She tried calling me again, dozens of times over the next few days. The messages shifted from angry to pleading, to desperate, to threatening, and back again. "You can't do this to me. I gave you 14 years of my life. I'll tell everyone what kind of man you really are. Please, Merritt, I made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. Think about the children. I saved every message." Adelaide added them to the file. And then, 3 weeks later, we went to court. The divorce proceedings were mercifully brief. Sloane's lawyer tried every angle. He argued that the trust should be considered marital property because my mother had established it during our marriage. He argued that my monthly payments to my mother represented a form of investment that entitled Sloane to a share. He even argued that I had abandoned my family by leaving after the phone call incident. None of it worked. The judge reviewed the trust documents. He reviewed the evidence of Sloane's affair. He reviewed the timeline that showed she had been planning to divorce me for months, not because of anything I had done, but because she had found someone else and thought I had nothing worth staying for. "Mr. Calloway," the judge said, turning to me near the end of the proceedings, "do you have anything you'd like to say?" I thought about it for a moment. Only that I loved my wife. I was faithful to her for 14 years. I worked hard to provide for our family. I supported her, trusted her, believed in our future together. I paused. And while I was at my mother's funeral, she was planning to leave me. While I was holding my dying mother's hand, she was celebrating that death with her lover. I don't say this out of anger, Your Honor. I say it because it's the truth, and the truth is all I have left. The judge nodded slowly. The court finds in favor of the petitioner. The assets held in the Vivian Calloway Family Trust are not subject to division. Primary custody of the minor children is awarded to the father. The respondent will receive standard visitation rights and no spousal support, given the evidence of infidelity and the circumstances of the marital breakdown. Sloane burst into tears. I felt nothing. Explaining everything to Wren and Sailor was the hardest part. They were 12 and 9, old enough to understand that something terrible had happened, young enough to be devastated by it. I sat them down in the living room of our new house, one of the properties I had inherited from my mother, a beautiful villa in Napa Valley, and tried to find words that wouldn't break them. "Your mother and I are getting divorced," I said. "I know that's hard to hear, and I'm sorry." "Why?" Wren asked. Her eyes were already filling with tears. "What happened?" "Sometimes marriages end, sweetheart. Sometimes people change, or they want different things, or they make choices that hurt each other too much to fix." "Did you make bad choices?" Sailor asked. "Did you hurt Mom?" "No, buddy, I didn't hurt her. But I don't want you to think of your mom as a bad person either. She made mistakes, but she's still your mother. She still loves you." "Then why can't you fix it?" I pulled them both close, held them against my chest the way I used to when they were small. "Because some things can't be fixed. But that doesn't mean we won't be okay. We're going to build a new life here in Grandma's vineyard. We're going to be happy. And you'll still see your mom, still have a relationship with her. That's not going to change." "I miss Grandma," Wren whispered. "I know, sweetheart, I miss her too. Every single day. She would have liked this house." I looked around at the vineyard, stretching out beyond the windows, the rolling hills covered in grapevines, the legacy my mother had built over 44 years of hard work and hidden dreams. "She did like this house," I said. "She built this house, and now it's ours." 2 years have passed since that phone call. I'm 46 now, living full-time in Napa Valley, running Calloway Vineyards with my brother Kiernan. It turns out I have a talent for the business, or maybe I just inherited my mother's instincts. Either way, the company has grown 30% since I took over, and we've won 3 gold medals at the California State Fair wine competition. My mother would have been proud. Wren is 14 now, starting high school in the fall. She's become fascinated by the science of winemaking, spending her weekends in the vineyard learning about soil composition and fermentation from our head winemaker. She wants to study viticulture in college. Sailor is 11, more interested in video games than grapes, but he's happy. He's made friends at his new school, joined the soccer team, started to laugh again the way he used to before everything fell apart. They see their mother every other weekend. Sloane moved back to San Francisco after the divorce, into a small apartment that Stellan helped pay for, until his wife Marguerite took him for everything he had. Now she works as an office manager at a real estate firm, living a life that's a far cry from the luxury she had planned to enjoy with my money. I don't take pleasure in her downfall. I don't celebrate her struggles. I simply don't think about her anymore, except when the kids come home from visits, and I see the shadow in their eyes that tells me something their mother said or did has hurt them again. That shadow is fading, though. A little more each month. They're healing the way children do, and I'm doing everything I can to help them grow into the kind of people my mother would have loved. Last month, I found something in my mother's office. I was cleaning out the last of her files, 2 years later, and there were still boxes I hadn't touched. In the bottom drawer of her desk, beneath stacks of old tax returns, I found a journal. It was leather-bound, well-worn, filled with my mother's careful handwriting. I opened it to a random page and found myself reading an entry from 15 years ago. March the 15th, 2009, Merritt called today. He's met someone, a girl named Sloane. He sounds so happy, so hopeful. He says she's different from the others. He says she might be the one. I want to believe him. I want to trust that she's everything he thinks she is. But I've lived long enough to know that people aren't always what they seem. That love makes us blind to things we don't want to see. I'll watch, I'll wait, and I'll hope I'm wrong. I turned to another entry, dated 5 years later. January 8th, 2014. Visited Merritt and Sloane for Christmas. Wren is beautiful. So much like Merritt when he was that age. The new baby, Sailor, is healthy and happy, but I see things. Small things. The way Sloane checks her phone when she thinks no one is watching. The impatience in her voice when Merritt talks about his work. The way she sighs when I arrive and brightens when I leave. I don't think she loves him. I don't think she ever did. But what can I do? He's happy. The children are healthy. And who am I to interfere in my son's marriage? I'll keep watching. I'll keep waiting. And I'll make sure he's protected no matter what. The last entry was dated 3 days before she died. November 2nd, 2024. I'm running out of time. The doctors won't say it, but I can see it in their faces. Weeks, maybe, not months. Everything is in place. The trust is established. Adelaide has her instructions. The evidence is documented. Whatever happens, Merritt will be protected. I wish I could have told him the truth. About the business, about Sloane, about all of it. But he needed to see it for himself. He needed to reach his own conclusions without me poisoning the well. He's a good man, better than he knows. And when the truth finally comes out, he'll have everything he needs to build a new life. I only wish I could be there to see it. My beautiful boy. My greatest achievement. Not the vineyard, not the business, not the money. Him. Always him. I closed the journal with tears streaming down my face. My mother had spent 15 years watching, waiting, protecting me from a truth I couldn't see. She had built an empire, hidden it from everyone, and structured it so that no one could ever take it away from me. All because she loved me. All because she knew, long before I did, what kind of person my wife really was. Thank you, Mom, I whispered to the empty room, for everything. It's Saturday morning now. The vineyard is waking up outside my window, workers moving between the rows, checking the vines, preparing for another harvest. Wren is already out there with them, learning everything she can, becoming the third generation of Callaways to tend these grapes. Sailor is in the kitchen making breakfast, complaining that we're out of his favorite cereal. Normal kid stuff. The kind of stuff that reminds me life goes on, even after everything falls apart. My mother built this empire from nothing. She hid it for 44 years, protecting it, nurturing it, waiting for the right moment to pass it on. And she protected me too, even after she was gone. That woman is finally gone. That's what my wife said 3 days after my mother's funeral. She was wrong about so many things. But she was right about one thing. My mother is gone. And she left behind a legacy that will last for generations. Not just money, not just property, not just a business, but a lesson. A lesson about love, about character, about the difference between people who stay for who you are and people who leave when they find out what you have. My mother knew the difference. And now, finally, so do I. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it sounds like something from a movie, a hidden fortune, a treacherous wife, a phone call that revealed everything. But it happened, every word of it. 3 days after my mother's funeral, I became one of the richest men in California. I rushed home to tell my wife, to share the news that would change our lives forever. But as I opened the door, I heard her whispering on the phone. That woman is finally gone. Those words still echo in my mind sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet and the vineyard stretches out beneath the stars. My wife was celebrating my mother's death, planning to leave me, laughing about how there was nothing to inherit. She was wrong about all of it. My mother was worth $48 million. She had built an empire in secret, protected it in trust, and left evidence of my wife's betrayal so that I would finally see the truth. And now I'm raising my children in that empire, teaching them the values my mother taught me, building a life that honors her memory. I'm not telling this story to gloat. I'm not telling it because I enjoy remembering the betrayal, the pain, the moment my marriage died in front of me. I'm telling it because somewhere out there, someone is being betrayed by someone they trust. Someone is being used, deceived, treated as a stepping stone to something better. Someone is wondering if the person they love is really who they seem to be. Trust your instincts. Pay attention to the signs. And know that the truth always comes out eventually, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. Now, I want to ask you something. What would you do if you rushed home to share the best news of your life, only to hear your spouse celebrating your parents' death and planning to leave you? Would you confront them? Would you stay silent? Would you walk away? Have you ever discovered someone's true feelings about you at the worst possible moment? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, especially anyone who has ever suspected that the person they love might not be who they seem. Comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story. I'll see you in the next one.